Can everyone see my screen? It should say, welcome to the Global Trade Help Desk.
It does. I can see it there.
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Haley, maybe just a minute for the participants, just to introduce yourself to
Yes.
them quickly, please.
Absolutely.
Just so that they have
I
a good context.
Yeah.
We've got our gods from Geneva in the session today, and I hope people appreciate your time.
Yeah, so my name is Kaylee Stevens. I'm a market analyst with the International Trade Center. I work in the Trade and Market Intelligence section. And the point of the Trade and Market Intelligence section is to make sure that businesses and especially SMEs have the resources and the data that they need to export their products successfully. And the way that we accomplish that is by, developing and making available these online tools. I'm going to talk about 5 of these tools today, but we have many other tools as well. And we do have a short session. We have, I'm going to try to, talk for 45 minutes and then maybe leave 15 minutes for questions at the end. So this session is really designed to introduce you to some of these tools, but I really encourage you to explore the tools on your own. And most of our tools have frequently asked questions pages. They have reference material. They have online tutorials. So please explore them. And if you have questions, come back to us. And I will show you, for example, at the bottom of all of our tools. So this is Trade Map. If you scroll down at the bottom, there's an email for us. So if you're playing around with the tools and you have questions, you can always email us. But there's also frequently asked questions for most of our tools. And this is Trade Map. And under other ITC tools, you also get a list of other tools that we have. Today, I'm going to talk about Trade Map, Export Potential Map, Market Access Map, Rules of Origin Facilitator, and the Global Trade Help Desk. And you may see that Global Trade Help Desk is not listed here, but if you go to ITC Market Analysis Portal, it lists some of our tools, but you also see the Global Trade Help Desk here. Also on this portal, you can get our, there we have a learning corner, and we have some newsletters, but mainly I just wanted to show you that Global Trade Help Desk can be accessed there. You can also always Google Global Trade Help Desk and it should pop up. To get to ITC Trade Map, you can always Google ITC Trade Map and it will come up right away. Okay, so I wanted to make this session pretty targeted, so I'm going to use these 5 different tools to talk about how we answer the questions, what HS code applies to my product, which markets should I focus on, what tariffs and non-tariff measures do I face in my target markets, and who are my competitors in those target markets. So, as business support organizations, as export promotion agencies, you may have companies that come to you and say, I want to export my product. And probably the first thing you need to know is what HS code applies to their product. And I assume that almost everyone here is familiar with HS codes. Yes?
Yes, yeah, we are.
Yeah,
well, we
great.
should be.
Okay.
Should be, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So HS stands for Harmonized System. It is administered. The HS nomenclature is administered by the World Customs Organization, and the HS codes are used to apply to know what tariffs apply to a product, but also to collect data on trade in goods. All right, let's say, so you need to know what HS code applies to your product. There are a couple ways that you can do this. The World Customs Organization publishes this information. So I have pulled up here the World Customs Organization. Here's the HS nomenclature for 2022. I find this to be a really useful resource because you can look at HS codes by chapter. and they have all the descriptions there. So we're going to go back to trade map. Okay, another source for HS code information is the customs authority in your country. So they should also publish that information. And then in many of our tools, we have an HS keyword search. So I'm going to show you how to use that search in trade map. So this is trade map, and we're going to click on advanced search. And here we can type in a keyword. So let's say that I want to export sunscreen. So I'm just going to type in sunscreen. And it's going to show me all the HS codes that reference sunscreen. And you will notice that, here's a 4-digit code, and then here are some 6-digit codes. And these 6-digit codes here don't actually mention sunscreen in the description specifically, so you might wonder why they're there. And that's because they are all nested under this HS4 code 3304, which does mention sunscreen. And the reason that I know that is because I looked at 3304 in the HS nomenclature just to see what's in there. So we see 3304, which is the 4-digit code, which mentions sunscreen. And then, sorry, the light went off in my office. And then we have all the 6-digit codes that come underneath this 4-digit code. So we'll go back to trade map. So for this presentation, I'm going to be using this 6-digit code, 330499. Okay. So one other thing that I want to say about HS codes that's going to be important later is that all HS codes up to 6 digits are the same for countries that follow the HS nomenclature. But once we get beyond 6 digits, the HS code can be up to 12 digits. We have what are called national tariff line codes. So those are unique for different countries, and those are really important when we are exporting our products because we need to know what national tariff line code our product will be imported under. And you can actually search by tariff line code in trade map, but I'm just going to talk about this again later, so I wanted to mention it now. Okay. So we're going to use this 6-digit code, 330499, and we want to explore some potential markets for sunscreen. And we could use trade map to see where a country like South Africa is currently exporting sunscreen, but we want to know what are some potential new markets. What are some markets that have untapped potential, or some markets where we could, hope to export some more sunscreen within the next 5 years. And we have a specific tool for that, which is called the export potential map. So I'm going to switch to the export potential map now. So this is the export potential map. And what it does is allow us to identify products, markets, and suppliers with export potential. The generic version of the export potential map is just for goods because it is not all data on services is collected. Countries don't all collect the same level of information on services data. So in order to have services in export potential map, we would need to have really consistent broad collection of services trade data, which we don't. So export potential map is just for goods. And it is a economic model that uses supply, demand, and market access conditions like tariffs to estimate a US dollar value of exports that a country can expect to achieve for a given product and target market in the year 2026. So this year, 2026, it's actually updated every fall. So this fall in October, we're going to extend that horizon to 2027.
Wow.
Yeah. Did you have a
Interesting.
question about that?
No, sorry, I didn't know that. Sorry, I didn't realize it sort of had a forecast projected, sort of years ahead. That's brilliant.
Yeah, so it is an estimate for the year 2026. And basically what we do is we estimate this value that could be achieved in that year, 2026, and then we look at how much of that potential has already been achieved by looking at actual exports. And then we basically subtract them and we get this estimate of how much more a country could export between sort of now and 2026. So it's how much more we could expect to export compared to actual exports. And actual exports in the export potential map is a weighted average of the period 2016 to 2020. So when we see actual exports referenced in export potential map, it's not for a specific year. It's really just this average of 5-year historical trade data. And that 5-year period is also updated when we update our projections in the fall. So in the fall, we will extend our forecast to 2027, and we will be using historical trade data for the period 2017 to 2021. And I will come back to this again, so don't worry. If that was a little bit fast. Okay, I also wanted to mention that certain goods are excluded from the export potential map, like extractive resource-based industries, pollutants, waste, tobacco products, antiques. And you can find a full list of the products that are excluded under frequently asked questions. Question 3 specifically deals with this list of excluded products. All right, so we're going to take a look at the tool now. So we want to know what the export potential is for South Africa. South Africa. Okay, we're looking at South Africa as an exporter. And so this figure right here, 42 billion, means that we expect that South Africa can export 42 billion more dollars in goods than it is currently exporting by 2026. And this 42 billion is in addition to what it is currently exporting. And what it is currently exporting is this average of exports for the period 2016 to 2020. And we have 2 options here. We can explore products or explore markets. So if we say explore products, we're going to look at the products that South Africa could export to tap into that 42 billion in untapped export potential. If we say explore markets, we're going to look at the markets that South Africa could export to tap into that potential. So I'm going to click on explore markets because I want to look specifically at sunscreen. All right, so what we have right away is we have export potential for all products, but I want to look specifically at sunscreen. All right, and what you see right away is a geo map, but I'm going to switch to this gap chart, which is just a different way to visualize the data. And by default, this is ranked by export potentials. So the total amount of exports that we expect to be achieved in 2026, it isn't. But what we really want to know is how much more can South Africa export. So we want to rank by untapped potential. And we can do that just by scrolling down to the bottom, and we say sort by potential to actual exports gap. So now it's going to rank markets based on how much more we expect South Africa could export to those markets between, I'm going to say now and 2026. All right, so first off, we see that the market with the most untapped export potential for sunscreen from South Africa is China. But we also see that Botswana is the market with the second most untapped export potential for sunscreen from South Africa. And if we hover over Botswana, we can see that, let me fix that. Okay, so this tells us that in 2026, our model predicts that South Africa will be able to export $40 million worth of sunscreen to Botswana. We see that actual exports are currently 23 million. So that is an average of sunscreen exports from South Africa to Botswana for the period 2016 to 2020. And then untapped potential is 17 million. So that means by 2026, we expect that that South Africa will be able to export 17 million more dollars worth of sunscreen to Botswana than they are currently exporting. I just want to pause there and ask if there are any questions about that. Does that make sense, more or less?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a lot of, no, definitely.
Okay.
This is amazing because it saves people in BSOs, government departments, an enormous amount of time and energy and cost to do this research. It would take days and weeks to gather all this data, and literally you see in a matter of minutes you've got it at your fingertips.
Okay, great.
That's brilliant, Katie.
So I want to point out that there are some markets down here that have these sort of dashed lines, like the UK, Japan, the US, France, Australia. And if we hover over that, we see that in this market, actual exports are greater than export potential. And that may look really strange, and you say, why is that? And what's happening here is that basically South Africa is already exporting more to the UK, more sunscreen to the UK than our model predicts. So this doesn't necessarily mean that South Africa should stop exporting sunscreen to the UK. It means that they're already very successful at it. It just means that based on our model, we don't necessarily think that there is more room to grow exports of sunscreen from South Africa to the UK. And that's based on supply and demand, population growth, and a few other things. So what we suggest is that when you are looking at the very disaggregated level, so if you are looking for a specific exporter, importer, and product, and you see one of these dashed lines, and you see that it says untapped potential remaining 0, basically, that's not necessarily a market you want to focus on. You want to focus on a market that has untapped potential remaining, like Botswana, like Zambia, like China. I want to say one thing about this. So this is at the most disaggregate level. So for exports from South Africa to the UK for a specific product. If you are looking at any level of aggregation, for example, if we switch here to subregions, we can see export potential by subregion. You'll see EU and West Europe has this dashed line. So you might think, oh, I don't want to export to EU and West Europe because you just told me that means that actual exports are already higher than export potential. But if we hover over it, we see that, while that is true, we still have untapped potential remaining. So you might say, why is that? And this happens because there are some markets in the EU and West Europe where actual exports are already higher than export potential, like the UK that we just saw. But this means if you have a positive number here, that there are still some markets within EU and West Europe that have untapped potential for sunscreen from South Africa. So if you are at sort of an aggregated regional level and you see this dashed line, you want to look into which markets within that region still have untapped potential. And if we go back to countries, for example, we can see Germany has untapped potential for sunscreen from South Africa. All right, so
this is where you make a decision of whether you're going to brand your product as a Chinese and start going after the Chinese market, or whether you're going to try and just continue going into Europe. Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. I mean, thanks, Katie.
Yeah. Just Kaylee, if I can just add a sort of a qualitative kind of business perspective on that for everybody. Exactly what Kaylee has just demonstrated is that it shows that the product is very competitive in the EU. The dotted line almost shows an overperformance. It means that the exporters to the EU are very competitive with their product there. And as Kaylee says, if you're competitive in one country in the EU, it means that you could be competitive in other countries, and that, for your strategy of which markets to target. If you're already exporting to certain countries in the EU, it makes very good business sense to extend to other markets in that particular region, because the data is showing that you're actually already very competitive from a business point of view. It might be your quality, it might be the pricing, it might be the presentation and so on, that it's an easier market to extend into other countries in the EU from a business strategy point of view. Thanks, Kaylee. Sorry for jumping in like that.
No. That's great. Thank you so much. So before I switch to the next tool, I want to say one thing about HS codes. So HS codes are revised about every 5 years. So there is a new HS nomenclature that went into effect on January 1st, 2022. And sometimes, product codes change when this HS nomenclature is revised. And also countries are not always using the same edition of the nomenclature. So some countries are already using HS codes for 2022, but some countries are still using HS codes from the 2007 nomenclature or the 2017 nomenclature. And because in the export potential map calculations, we use sort of 5 years of historical trade data to estimate export potential, we need to have stable product groups over this 5-year period. And if during that 5-year period, there was a change in a code that applied to a product because of an update to the HS nomenclature, or different countries are using different editions of the HS nomenclature, we have to create product groups. And 330499 is not a product group, but there are many product groups in the export potential map. So I'm just going to show you one example of that. I'm going to go to the products tab, and we are looking at export potential for products from South Africa in the world. And if you see here, motor vehicles for the transport of persons, not elsewhere specified, it says 8703XX, which is definitely not an HS6 code. Yeah. So if you're in export potential map and you see a combination of numbers and letters, that means we've created a product group because there has been a change in a HS code because of a nomenclature revision, or we have different countries using different editions of the HS nomenclature. So the important thing is, if you see something like this, you need to know what HS6 codes are in that product group. So to do that, you go to Resources, Correspondence Tables, and we're just going to type in 8703XX. And this tells you all the HS6 codes that are in that product group. And if we scroll down to the bottom, we can see basically there are 13 HS6 codes. It's only displaying 10 at the moment, but you can display all of them. And you can also download the full correspondence table, which tells you all the product groups that we've made in the export potential map. So if you see something that doesn't look like an HS code, it's probably because it's a product group.
Okay.
All right. So now I'm going to go to another tool, which is Market Access Map. So now we know we want to export sunscreen from South Africa to Botswana or maybe Zambia. And now we need to know what tariff our product will face in those markets, or what non-tariff measure we will be faced with. So things like regulatory requirements, labeling, packaging, all of that. All right, so this is Market Access Map. it has lots of information. I think we're just going to sort of scratch the surface on it today, but it has 4 main modules. It has the access module, which gives you detailed information on tariff and non-tariff measures for a specific market and product. It has the compare module, which allows you to compare tariffs across different target markets, exporting countries, and products. It has an analyze module, which allows you to look at all trade agreements in force for a given country, among other things. And it has a download module. Okay, so let's say the exporting country is South Africa. We want to export to Botswana because we saw that, for sunscreen, Botswana was the market with the second highest level of untapped potential by 2026. We could look at China, but we're going to look at Botswana.
Okay.
And we're going to type in our code for sunscreen, which is 330499. Okay, we're going to click search. So, like I said at the beginning, HS6 codes are the same for all countries, but once you get past, into HS8 or basically up to 12 digits long, what you have is called a national tariff line code. And when we're exporting to a country, we need to know which national tariff line code our product will be imported under. So here we see that Botswana has 4 national tariff line codes within this HS6 code for sunscreen. And we're just going to choose one of them. And right away, we see the tariff that would apply to sunscreen exported from South Africa to Botswana. And we see that it is 0% because, of course, both these countries are part of the Southern African Customs Union. And if we click on trade agreement details, we get information about where this, 0% tariff comes from. It's because of the regional grouping for SACU. It gives us the member states. It gives us the entry into force. And in order to qualify for this 0% tariff, usually you need to show that your product originates within a Southern African Customs Union country. And to do that, you have to basically comply with the rules of origin by filling out a certificate of origin. And you have information about that here, but you can also click on this button, Find Out More, which takes you to another one of our tools called the Rules of Origin Facilitator. And I'm just going to scroll down to the bottom to show you sort of the administrative procedure, certificate of origin for this, for SACU. And importantly, it says it's self-certification. So basically, that means that the exporter themselves can fill out a form saying my product comes from within SACU, and so it should qualify for the 0% tariff. That's not the case for all preferential tariffs, but I just wanted to demonstrate that in this case it is. So we're going to go back to market access map. All right. Just checking how much time we have here. Okay. Yeah, so I'm going to show you this compare function. This is pretty, before I go there, sorry, let me scroll down. On this page, you also have information on trade remedies. So these are things like anti-dumping measures, countervailing duties, or safeguards. And these basically are additional tariffs that you would have to pay on top of the customs tariff, because of anti-dumping, countervailing duty, or safeguard measures that a country has put into place. In this case, Botswana does not apply any of these trade remedies on sunscreen from South Africa. Not for sunscreen, but the US has lots of these trade remedies on steel, on bicycles, on lots of things. So trade remedies are something that are important to pay attention to. And then we have regulatory requirements. So these are import requirements of Botswana. So when you export something from South Africa to Botswana, you have to comply with these import requirements. These are non-tariff measures. So we have things like labeling requirements, safety or performance requirements, and you can just click on the little drop-down menu, and you can get more information about these requirements. Okay, so next I want to show you the compare module. So we're going to say compare markets. Exporting country is South Africa. We're going to look at basically all destination markets, and we're going for the product 330499. Okay. All right. I'm going to sort by imported value. And what this does is it shows us the MFN tariff, so the tariff that applies to WTO members, effectively applied tariff, which is going to show us any preferential tariff, and the preference margin, which is the difference between the MFN tariff and the effectively applied tariff. And so any preferential tariff is going to show up here in effectively applied tariff. But if you have a big number or if you have any number in the preference margin column, that means that there is a difference between the MFN tariff and the preferential tariff. So you would have a preference margin in that market. And we see a lot of countries, there's no preference margin for sunscreen. But we see Zimbabwe, we have, a preference margin of 12.5%. If we keep scrolling, we see in Zambia, we have a preference margin of 25%. And so if we look at this, we see in Zambia, the MFN tariff, so the tariff that applies to WTO members, is 25%. But for South Africa, there is a 0% preferential tariff. So, we want to learn more about this. And one thing I will say about MFN tariffs is that they are not the bound tariff necessarily. So, countries at the WTO commit to a certain level of bound tariff, but they're allowed to lower their tariff below that rate if they do it for all countries. So that's called most favored nation. If you offer it to one country, you have to offer it to all others. So that's what MFN stands for. It's not necessarily the bound tariff. Okay, so let's look at Zambia. So we click on Zambia, and here we are looking at the tariff applied by Zambia to sunscreen from South Africa. And we see that the MFN tariff, so for all WTO countries or WTO members, is 25%, but there is a preferential tariff for South Africa of 0%. So we're going to click on Trade Agreement Details to find out where that preferential tariff is coming from. And we see that it comes from the regional group, the Southern African Development Community. And we see the member states. And again, to qualify for this 0% tariff, we have to show that our product is coming from a Southern African Development Community country. And so we have to comply with the rules of origin by filling out a certificate of origin. So we say we want to find out more.
So Zambia would have done this to protect themselves probably from dumping of sunscreen from the east, but obviously not from the region. Okay.
Yeah. So again, we're at Rules of Origin Facilitator, and we have lots of information on the rules of origin, lots of interesting information that I encourage you to explore when you have time. But I wanted to just highlight this, that the certificate of origin for the Southern African Development Community is issued by an agency. It is not self-issued. So it says it is issued by an agency empowered for this purpose. So it's not necessarily the case that, like the Southern African Customs Union, you can't just fill out the certificate of origin yourself and say, see, I qualify. You need to have an agency authorize that certificate of origin. So this is just something that's important to pay attention to with rules of origin. And in the rules of origin facilitator, we also have information on institutions that can help with this process.
Brilliant.
Okay.
Kelly, if I can just jump in there, just a little bit of business interpretation there. For any business, that immediately highlights the possibility of nearly 25% competitive advantage against suppliers from other countries who have to pay that customs duty. And that is extraordinarily important when you're trying to get into a market at the right retail price for the market. That 25% competitive advantage is phenomenally important.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes you have countries that they don't qualify for a preferential tariff, even though one exists, because they don't fill out the paperwork correctly, or they don't know what paperwork to fill out. So that's where business support organization, export support, export promotion agencies are really important for SMEs in this process. Okay, definitely. So I'm going to go back to TradeMap now, because we know we're exporting sunscreen from South Africa. We want to export to Botswana or Zambia, and we want to know who our competitors would be in those markets. And we can use TradeMap to look at that. So TradeMap is going to tell us who currently is exporting, or who Botswana and Zambia are currently importing sunscreen from. So we are going to first look at 330499. Okay, we have our products, and we want to look at Botswana. Okay, we're going to look at trade indicators. Okay, so this is showing us Botswana's imports of sunscreen from all markets. And trade indicators are, some indicators that our team has calculated to sort of make this process of identifying kind of competitors and change in imports a little bit easier. So first off, we can see that South Africa is the largest supplier of sunscreen to Botswana, and that basically they account for 99.5% of Botswana's imports of sunscreen. So 99% of South Africa, or of Botswana's imports of sunscreen, come from South Africa. So they have a very concentrated, market share in Botswana, which is great. And we also have information here on the growth in the imported value from South Africa between 2017 and 2021, the growth in imported quantity, and some other figures as well. We also have information on the trade balance, which means that South Africa is exporting basically way more sunscreen to Botswana than they import of sunscreen from Botswana. But yeah. All right, so Botswana looks like a pretty good market for sunscreen from South Africa. Yeah.
Kelly, can I just jump in with one additional thing there? If everybody looks at there's a column there that says unit value in US dollars per unit. And again, when you're supporting businesses to see, are they price competitive in the market? I mean, it's quite clear that South African product must be quite competitive in the market. But if you click on that column that says unit value in US dollars per unit, that will also sort it hierarchically about which country is supplying at the highest unit value per unit. So once a company has done its calculation of its export costs, that it estimates what is my product going to land in that country at, you can see, are you again reasonably price competitive versus suppliers from these other countries? That's an element that's often overlooked. How do I know that I'm price competitive? And that column will tell you where you fit into the price competitiveness compared to other countries. Sorry, Kaylee, it's something that I found very useful over the years.
No, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Okay, so let's look at Zambia. Zambia. Nope. Okay. So now we are looking at Zambia's imports of sunscreen. And I ranked by value imported in 2021. And again, South Africa is the largest supplier of sunscreen to Zambia, but their sort of market share is a bit smaller than in Botswana. So we see that in this case, 68.4% of Zambia's imports of sunscreen come from South Africa. We can see that, maybe South Africa has a little bit of competition from Tanzania in the Zambian market. And we also have sort of statistics on growth in imported value and growth in quantity. Okay, so now I want to switch to the last tool that I'm going to show you, which is the Global Trade Help Desk, which really brings together data from all these tools that I've just demonstrated. Okay, so here we have the Global Trade Help Desk. And for the Global Trade Help Desk, I think it works best when you know exactly what market you're exporting from, what market you're exporting to, and what product that you're exporting. I think the tools that I've shown so far, Trade Map, Market Access Map, Export Potential Map, are really good for sort of exploring different markets and different products. But once you really know what product it is, where you're exporting to, you can use the Global Trade Help Desk, and it sort of brings all that information together in one place. So we're going to select exporting. We're exporting from South Africa. We are exporting 330499. And we are exporting to Botswana. Okay. Let's say go. And right away it's going to show you some sort of general trade statistics about Botswana. It shows you how much sunscreen Botswana imported from the world in 2021. And it shows you that, basically Botswana is the 84th most important importer of sunscreen in the world. So they're not the top importer of sunscreen, but this data is all from Trade Map. And then we see a market perspective for South Africa in Botswana. So we see that basically South Africa is the dominant supplier of sunscreen in Botswana, and we actually just saw that in Trade Map. So we know where that data comes from. We see that there has been 7% import growth of Botswana's imports of sunscreen from South Africa. That was also a figure that we saw in that trade indicator page in Trade Map. And then we have export potential. And you may remember when I was in the export potential tool, $40 million is actually, it's not the untapped level of potential. It is the total amount that we expect South Africa to be able to achieve for sunscreen in Botswana in the year 2026. But it doesn't tell us how much more, basically it doesn't tell us what's untapped. This number here includes actual exports. So really, if we want to know how much more South Africa can expect to export to Botswana, we need to look at the export potential map. And when we did that, we saw that the untapped potential for sunscreen from South Africa in Botswana, I think, was 17 million. Yeah. So I just wanted to make a note about that. But this tool also allows you to go back to the export potential map. Okay, so we just continue to scroll down. So then we have information on import tariffs. So, the 0% tariff because South Africa and Botswana are both in the Southern African Customs Union. If you say more information about tariffs, it will basically take you to a page that pulls from market access map. And then we have the section on, the requirements that your product has to face. So the non-tariff measures, product requirements, market conditions, pre-shipment and inspection. And these first three, they are all included in market access map. This thing here, notified regulatory changes. So this is not necessarily on the screens that we were seeing in market access map, but it is sort of regulatory changes that have been notified by WTO members. It doesn't necessarily mean that something has changed for the sort of import requirements, but it's something that's important to pay attention to because they can change import requirements there anyway. But countries are all required to notify these changes. They don't necessarily they don't always do that, but this is nice because it kind of brings together some stuff from market access map and then some additional information that might be relevant. Okay, so then we have this thing on time and cost to export. We haven't seen this anywhere else in the tools that I've shown you, but this is something that's done within Global Trade Help Desk. And I think you can also click on this to find out where these estimates are coming from. All right, then we have the section on putting your plan into action. So we have information on a business directory, which is pretty cool. So this actually comes from Trade Map. I didn't demonstrate it, but you can click on business directory and then say that you want to access this. So this is going to show you basically companies in Botswana that indicate that they import sunscreen. So if you are exporting from South Africa, you could, potentially contact these importers. This data is not collected by ITC. It is collected by, third parties like Dun & Bradstreet or Compass. And so it requires a little bit of, double checking to make sure that those are actually companies that are importing sunscreen. But it's just designed as sort of a helpful tool, in this process.
Hi, Katie.
Mm-hmm.
I just have a quick question about that because that's particularly quite important for a project that we're busy with right now. Excuse me. In terms of finding the details of companies and within a particular sector, under a particular HS code, exporting to the UK, for instance. Now, we don't have, I don't know if it's something that somehow we are missing out on, but the tab for companies is grayed out. Why would that be the case when we work for the Ministry of Trade?
Okay, so...
And is there something that we can do to access that? Because that's absolutely critical for the nature of the work that we do.
All right. And what country are you based in?
Based in South Africa. So I'm from the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, myself and my colleagues. And so basically we are responsible for promoting various companies, trade promotion, export promotion of South African products and services towards particular markets. So for instance, we have a project for the UK, and we need to find companies with a high export potential within particular sectors, but that company information, Rob was able to show, to guide me through it the other day, but from my profile myself, I cannot access the company's information. So trade, in order to make Trade Map work, you have to set up an account. So I'm using my account now. Setting up an account should be free for users in developing countries. So as long as you are signed in,
you should be able to access the company's tab. So
I think
sorry,
what
go ahead.
happens sometimes, Janice, if I may, I think if you're doing a search on and you're only on sort of a 2 tariff code at the tariff level or 4 level code, the company's tab doesn't appear. It's only when you go into the 6 level and 8 level, I think that's when you actually see the companies. Because sometimes I've also missed it, and then when you go into more detail, then you actually get the company. I don't know if that's when it switches on. I'm not too sure.
I'm gonna try that because I do have an account myself, and my colleagues do have an account, Kaylee. But we haven't been able to. So thanks for that, Rob. We're gonna try and access it in that way. But Kaylee, would I be able to email you if there's if we have
absolutely.
any further issues?
Yeah, and so the email where you can contact us is this marketanalysis@intrasyn.org. I mean, I can give you my personal email address, but basically, if you email this, it will go to the person who is an expert in TradeMap. And so that's the best email to email. Okay.
Try there, please. Thank you very much. Thank you so
much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Rob.
Kaylee, sorry, if you can just jump back to that tab again quickly, just for Janice. Yeah. Janice, my understanding is you're looking for South African exporters. Is that correct? At the moment, you're not looking for the British importers. You're looking for the South African exporters. Is that right?
Yes. And at some point, yes, we will be looking for British importers. But right now, the task at hand is to find the exporters within a particular product range.
Yeah. Okay, just keep in mind, this is not, as Kaylee says, all the other stuff is information that is gathered at customs clearance point. Now, there is confidentiality with customs authorities around the world. So the customs authorities, this is not information that is drawn from the customs authorities. This is information from Dun & Bradstreet and from Compass. Now, if Kaylee went to change there, you'll see at the moment she's looking at imports in Botswana. So if you change that to South Africa, to exports, it would then bring up. But they're generally, because this is Compass and Dun & Bradstreet data, it's not consign or consignee data information that is provided. And you'll see it comes up there. And exactly as Rob said, you do need to be at the 6-digit HS level in order for this to come up. But if you have a problem, then get hold of Kaylee or that link, or give me a shout and I'll run through it with you again sometime.
Okay, great. Thanks, Robert.
Thank you so much, Robert. So I'm just going to go back to the Global Trade Help Desk for a second. And basically, this brings me to the end of my presentation. I just want to show that, we just looked at the business directory. We also have information on trade finance providers, trade promotion organizations, and intellectual property offices, which is additional information that you didn't see in any of the other tools that I demonstrated, which is why Global Trade Help Desk is also a good tool to use. And lastly, I just wanted to mention that the Global Trade Help Desk is available in many different languages, some of which are not, we have Portuguese, for example, and Export Potential Map and Trade Map are not currently available in Portuguese. So Global Trade Help Desk is a great resource, as are all the other tools that I talked about today. And so that just brings me to the end of my presentation. So thank you so much for your attention.
Fantastic. Thanks, Katie. No, that's been terrific. I mean, I like the way you did it, because you didn't start with Trade Map, which is where I think, I've always sort of started at Trade Map, but you kind of went to Trade Map at the end just to validate, what you're doing. So I think it was really fantastic. I mean, I think, I think everybody on board is, I can't really thank you enough, because I mean, it's been really insightful. Even for myself, I've even learned more stuff. And I mean, like I said, you think you sort of know what's going on, but it's always so much to learn. I mean, So Rob, I don't know if you want to say
No,
Just
Kelly, again, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And as I say, Rob says the same thing. I've been using, starting with TradeMap, I think I probably started using the first iterations of TradeMap in the middle of the 90s. And, you know, the tools have evolved. And exactly as Rob says, I've used them a lot. You've shown me stuff that I wasn't even aware of
me as
after
well.
30 years of working with the stuff. And this is something that I just want to emphasize to everybody. It is absolutely worth your while if you're working in an export promotion agency or a business support organization, chamber of commerce or something. It is genuinely valuable time well spent to learn how to use these tools. And the best way is to practice with them in real life. It's worth spending a day or two learning how to go through all of these things. And Kaylee, if it's all right with you, we'll share the recording of this to this group, so that you can always refresh. And just for everybody also to keep in mind that on our Tfsa Trade and Information Hub, there are other tools that are there. For example, if you know you've used Market Potential Map and you're targeting the EU, there's a whole My Access to Markets and My Trade Assistance tool that we've got there from the EU, and you can go into the detail there. It's very similar, and there's one from the UK as well, and there are also export guides. And just on our export tools page on the Trade and Information Hub, there is a link through to excellent videos that the ITC has up on their website, so that if you're struggling with anything, the guide videos on how to use these tools are there as well. And if you really come unstuck at any point, come back to us, come back to International, to ITC, and that's exactly what we're all here to help you, so that you can help the exporters. Because if you battle with these things, believe me, the companies themselves, they're even more pressed for time, and time is even more a case of time is money for them. So this is the point of being an export agency and a chamber, to help your members. And these tools are free of charge. So chambers of commerce and export agencies, you can provide all of this as an additional high value service to your members at absolutely zero cost. So that when they're saying, is it worth my while, being a member of this Chamber of Commerce, or is it worth my while getting a service from the export agency? This is absolutely free, available as an extra valuable service that you can provide at no additional cost to yourselves. But Kaylee, thank you very, very much. I just want, Rob, let's just check to see if there are any other questions. I saw the question from Janice there, which I think we've addressed. And Janice, if you do have battles, come back to us or come back to Kaylee as well, and we'll certainly make sure that you unblock whatever block there is there. But
I've just tried. Sorry, I've just tried it at 6-digit level. It's still not showing things. I will send you I will send an email to the who Kaylee has referred me to.
Yes, please do.
Super. Excellent, Janice. Okay. And Janice, glad you were able to join us this morning. Look, everyone, that is the last of our Knowledge Center training workshops that TFSA is doing. We have Rob Canavo is organizing still on the 22nd of September. And you can see the struggle that he has. But he's trying to get 3 buyers from retail chains in the UK to join us on that webinar on the 22nd. You can see the steam coming out of his ears, because buyers are some of the toughest people to actually get involved in anything like this. But look out for that. And if Rob is successful on it, everybody owes him an enormous thank you for getting them on. Anyway. And just for everybody else's information, sorry, Kaylee, just a little bit of background on TFSA. At the moment, we're just waiting for news on a year's extension that our donor, the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, is contemplating at the moment. And, we've set up our Trade and Information Hub with links to all of these tools and guides, and our School of Export. And the one thing we didn't ask Kaylee to touch on, because she only had an hour, is built into the ITC platform is also the She Trades platform. So for the women, join up to She Trades in South Africa. CEDA is the Small Enterprise Development Agency. They've tied up with ITC and they formed the She Trades South Africa chapter. They do have intent to form up chapters in other countries in the region. And keep in mind that there is also online free of charge training through the ITC, but also from our TFSA hub. And we are looking to try to get business stakeholders on board to TFSA so that our services from the TFSA platform can continue well into the future and possibly even be built out deeper and wider further across the African continent. We've had some interesting discussions already, not only with Kaylee and her colleague Alain, but also the ITC office in Eswatini. There's a program running there, and we certainly hope to collaborate to make an end-to-end, almost like one-stop shop that exporters can use to even, we hope, down the line, even run sales missions and buyer connecting facilities so that you can actually get an export sale out of it. Because it's one thing to have these tools and the knowledge, and we realize that exporters in this region particularly need additional support to actually go that level of getting certifications in place and actually meeting up and transacting with buyers and dealing with all the paperwork, because a sister organization, Trademark East Africa, they recently did a survey. For every consignment shipped out of Africa, there is an average of 60 different documents and certificates required to be put together for that consignment. And that can ramp up if it's chemical products, beauty products, things that
Rob, you're freezing.
Rob, we can't hear you.
Rob, you're frozen. I think
Okay,
Rob's frozen.
I think we're done
Anyway,
now.
yeah, I think we're done. Kaylee, thank you very much. And thank you to everybody who joined us today. We will share this on our WhatsApp group as well. And thanks again, Kaylee, and we'll keep in touch with you, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Thanks, everyone. Thanks,
Bye.
Bussy. Rob.
Bye.
Cheers, Rob.
Kelly, thanks ever so much. Cheers, everyone. Bye.
Cheers,
Yeah, my pleasure. Bye.
Bye. Stop recording.